Okay, we're finishing this chapter. Sorry, we got like halfway through it. Where the political allegiance of the young to the far right was at its most obvious was in Germany's universities, many of them famous centers of learning with traditions going back to the Middle Ages. Some leftish professors did manage to secure appointments under the Weimar Republic, but they were few in number. Universities were still elite institutions after the war and drew almost all their students from the middle classes. Particularly powerful were the student dueling corps, conservative, monarchist, and nationalist to a man. Some of them played an active role in the violence that attended the suppression of the revolutionary outbreaks that took place in 1919 to 1921. To neutralize their influence, students in all universities established democratic representative institutions of a sort appropriate to the new republic early in 1919, the General Student Unions. All students had to belong to these and were entitled to vote for representatives on their governing bodies. The student unions formed a national association and began to have some influence in areas such as student welfare and university reform. But they, too, fell under the influence of the far right. Under the impact of political events, from the final acceptance of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 to the French invasion of the Ruhr in 1923, fresh generations of students streamed into nationalist associations and flocked to the colors of the traditional student corps. Soon, right-wing slates of candidates were being elected to all of the student unions, while students' disillusion with Germany's new democracy grew as inflation rendered their incomes worthless and overcrowding made conditions in the universities even more unbearable. Student numbers grew rapidly from 60,000 in 1914 to 104,000 in 1931, not least under the impact of demographic change. Governments poured money into widening access, and universities became a significant route to upward social mobility for the sons of lower civil servants, small businessmen, and even to some extent manual laborers. The financial problems of the Republic forced many students to work their way through university, creating further resentment. Already in 1924, however, the chances of the swelling numbers of graduates finding a place in the job market began to decline. From 1930, they were almost non-existent. The vast majority of professors, as their collective public declarations of support for German war aims in 1914 to 1918 had shown, were also strongly nationalist. Many contributed to the right-wing intellectual atmosphere, with their lectures denouncing the peace settlement of 1919. They added to this with administrative resolutions and decisions attacking what they saw as the threat of racially alien Jewish students coming to the university from the East. Many wrote in alarmist terms about the looming prospect, which existed largely in their own imaginations, of whole subject areas in the universities being dominated by Jewish professors, and framed their hiring policy accordingly. In 1923, a massive wave of nationalist outrage swept through German universities when the French occupied the Ruhr, and student groups took an active part in stirring up resistance. Well before the end of the 1920s, the universities had become political hotbeds of the extreme right. A generation of graduates was being created that thought of itself as an elite, as graduates still did in a society where only a very small proportion of the population ever managed to get into university, but an elite that in the wake of the First World War put action above thought and national pride above abstract learning. An elite to which racism, anti-Semitism, and ideas of German superiority were almost second nature, an elite that was determined to combat the feeble compromises of an over-tolerant liberal democracy with the same toughness that their elders had shown in the First World War. For such young men, violence seemed a rational response to the disasters that had overtaken Germany. To the most intelligent and highly educated, the older generation of ex-soldiers seemed too emotionally scarred, too disorderly. What was needed was sobriety, planning, and utter ruthlessness in the cause of national regeneration. All of these influences were, in the end, secondary as far as the majority of these students' contemporaries were concerned. Far more important to them was the overriding experience of political dislocation, economic privation, war, destruction, civil strife, inflation, national defeat, and partial occupation by foreign powers, an experience shared by young people born in the decade or so leading up to the First World War. A young clerk born in 1911 later wrote, "We were not spared anything. We knew and felt the worries in the house. The shadow of necessity never left our table and made us silent. We were rudely pushed out of our childhood and not shown the right path. The struggle for life got to us early. Misery, shame, hatred, lies, and civil war imprinted themselves on our souls and made us mature early." The generation born between the turn of the century and the outbreak of the First World War was indeed a generation of the unconditional, ready for anything in more than one respect. It was to play a fateful role in the Third Reich. Weimar's radically modernist culture was obsessed, to what many middle-class people must have felt was an unhealthy degree, by deviance, murder, atrocity, and crime. The graphic drawings of an artist like George Grosz were full of violent scenes of rape and serial sex killers, a theme found in the work of other artists of the day as well. Murderers were central figures in films such as Fritz Lang's plays like Bertolt Brecht's The Threepenny Opera, and novels such as Alfred Dublin's modernist masterpiece, Berlin Alexanderplatz. The trials of real serial killers like Fritz Haarmann or Peter Kürten, the Dusseldorf vampire, were nationwide media sensations, with graphic reporting in the press catering to a mass readership that followed every twist and turn of events. Corruption became a central theme, even of novels about Berlin, written by foreign visitors, as in Christopher Isherwood's Mr. Norris Changes Trains. The criminal became an object of fascination as well as fear, fueling respectable anxieties about social order and adding to middle-class distaste at the inversion of values that seemed to be at the center of modernist culture. The huge publicity given to serial killers convinced many not only that the death penalty had to be rigorously enforced against such bestial individuals, but also that censorship needed to be reintroduced to stop their celebration in popular culture and the daily boulevard press. Meanwhile, the inflation and disorder of the post-war years had seen the emergence of organized crime on a scale almost rivaling that of contemporary Chicago, particularly in Berlin, where the ring associations of the burgeoning criminal underworld were celebrated in films like M. The feeling that crime was out of control was widely shared among those whose job it was to maintain the law and order that so many people thought was now under threat. The entire judicial system of the Wilhelmine period was transported, unchanged, to the Weimar era. The civil and criminal law codes were almost entirely unamended, and attempts to liberalize them, for example, by abolishing the death penalty, ran into the sands. As before, the judiciary was a body of men trained for the judge's role from the beginning, not, as in England, for example, appointed to the judiciary after a relatively long career at the bar. Many judges in office during the 1920s had thus been members of the judiciary for decades and had imbibed their fundamental values and attitudes in the age of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Their position was strengthened under the Republic, since it was a basic political principle of the new democracy, like others, that the judiciary should be independent of political control, a principle quickly and uncontroversially anchored in Articles 102 and 104 of the Constitution. Rather like the army, therefore, the judiciary was able to operate for long stretches of time without any real political interference. The judges were all the more independent because the vast majority of them regarded laws promulgated by legislative assemblies rather than by a divinely ordained monarch as no longer neutral, but as the chairman of the German Judges' Confederation, which represented 8 out of the roughly 10,000 German judges, put it, party, class, and bastard law, a law of lies. Where several parties exercise rule, he complained, the result is compromise laws. These constitute mishmash laws. They express the cross purposes of the ruling parties. They make bastard law. All majesty is fallen, the majesty of the law, too. As the chairman of the German Judges' Confederation, he said this represented 8 out of roughly 10,000 German judges. That means 8,000 out of roughly 10,000 German judges, right? Or does he mean literally just 8? Why would you have a confederation of 8 people? He means 8,000, right? I think so. Okay. There was some justification, perhaps, in the complaint that the political parties were exploiting the judicial system for their own purposes and creating new laws with a specific political bias. The extreme right and left-wing parties maintained specific departments devoted to the cynical business of making political capital out of trials and kept a staff of political lawyers who developed a battery of highly sophisticated and utterly unscrupulous techniques for turning court proceedings into political sensations. No doubt, this further contributed to discrediting Weimar justice in the eyes of many. Yet the judges themselves, in the altered context of the advent of a parliamentary democracy, could be regarded as exploiting trials for their own political purposes too. After years, indeed decades, of treating social democratic and left liberal critics of the Kaiser's government as criminals, judges were unwilling to readjust their attitudes when the political situation changed. Their loyalty was given, not to the new republic, but to the same abstract ideal of the Reich which their counterparts in the officer corps continued to serve. An ideal built largely on memories of the authoritarian system of the Bismarckian Reich. Inevitably, perhaps, in the numerous political trials which arose from the deep political conflicts of the Weimar years, they sided overwhelmingly with those right-wing offenders who claimed also to be acting in the name of this ideal and cheered on the prosecution of those on the left who did not. In the mid-1920s, the left-wing statistician Emil Julius Gumbel published figures showing that the 22 political murders committed by left-wing offenders from late 1919 to mid-1922 led to 38 convictions, including 10 executions and prison sentences averaging 15 years apiece. By contrast, the 354 political murders, which Gumbel reckoned to have been committed by right-wing offenders in the same period, led to 24 convictions, no executions at all, and prison sentences averaging a mere 4 months apiece. 23 right-wing murderers who confessed to their crimes were actually acquitted by the courts. Of course, these statistics may not have been entirely accurate, and there were frequent amnesties of political prisoners agreed on by the extreme parties in the Reichstag with enough support from other political groupings to get them through, so that many political offenders were released only after serving a relatively short time in jail. But what mattered about the behavior of the judges was the message it sent to the public. A message bolstered by numerous prosecutions of pacifists, communists, and other people on the left for treason throughout the Weimar years. According to Gumbel, while only 32 people had been condemned for treason in the last 3 peacetime decades of the Bismarckian Reich, over 10,000 warrants were issued for treason in the 4, also relatively peaceful years, from the beginning of 1924 to the end of 1927, resulting in 1,071 convictions. It's Reichstag. The Reichstag? Fuck you. What? Okay. Emphasis on the A. What? Oh, like Reichstag? It's that? Reichstag?
Reichstag.
Fuck you. That's the American pronunciation. What's the British one?
Reichstag.
Reichstag. Reichstag. Fuck you. A substantial number of court cases dealt with people brave enough to expose the secret armaments and maneuvers of the army in the press. Perhaps the most famous instance was that of the pacifist and left-wing editor Karl von Ossietzky, who was condemned in 1931 to 18 months imprisonment for publishing in his magazine, The World Stage, or Die Weltbühne, an article revealing that the German army was training with combat aircraft in Soviet Russia, an act that was illegal according to the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. Another equally celebrated case involved the left-wing journalist Felix Feckenbach. His offense, committed in 1919, was to have published Bavarian files from 1914 relating to the outbreak of the First World War, because this had, in the opinion of the court, damaged the interests of Germany in the peace negotiations by suggesting an element of German responsibility. Feckenbach was sentenced to 11 years imprisonment in Munich by a so-called People's Court, an emergency body set up by Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, set up to dispense summary justice on looters and murderers during the Bavarian Revolution of 1918. These had been adapted to deal with treason cases during the counter-revolution of the following year. They were not wound up until 1924, despite their outlawing by the Weimar Constitution 5 years previously. The creation of these courts, with their bypassing of the normal legal system, including the absence of any right to appeal against their verdicts, and their implicit ascription of justice to the people rather than to the law, set an ominous precedent for the future and was to be taken up again by the Nazis in 1933. In order to try and counter these influences, the Social Democrats managed to push through a law for the protection of the Republic in 1922. The resulting state court was intended to remove the trial of right-wing political offenders from an all-too-sympathetic judiciary and place it in the hands of appointees of the Reich president. The judiciary soon managed to neutralize it, and it had little effect on the overall pattern of verdicts. Friedrich Ebert and the Social Democrats, although supposedly committed to opposing the death penalty as a matter of political principle, inserted it into the law for the protection of the Republic and gave retrospective approval to summary executions carried out in the civil disorders of the immediate post-war period. In doing so, they made it easier for a future government to introduce similarly draconian laws for the protection of the state and to confound a central principle of justice that no punishments should be applied retrospectively to offenses which did not carry them at the time they were committed. This, too, was a dangerous precedent for the future. The regular courts had little time for the principles enunciated in the law for the protection of the Republic. Judges almost invariably showed leniency towards an accused man if he claimed to have been acting out of patriotic motives, whatever his crime. These are sounded real weird here. The cap push of 1920, for instance, led to the condemnation of only one of the participants in this armed attempt to overthrow the legitimately elected government, and even he was sentenced to no more than a brief period of confinement in a fortress because the judges counted his selfless patriotism as a mitigating factor. In 1923, 4 men won their appeal to the Reich Court, the old established supreme judicial authority in the land, against a sentence of 3 months' imprisonment each for shouting at a meeting of the Young German Order, a right-wing youth group, in Gotha, the words, "We don't need a Jew republic, boo to the Jew republic." In its judgment, the Reich Court declared, somewhat unconvincingly, that the meaning of these words was unclear. They could mean the new legal and social order in Germany, in whose establishment and participation of German and foreign Jews was outstanding. They could also mean the excessive power and the excessive influence that a number of Jews that is small in relation to the total population exercises in reality in the view of large sections of the people. It has not even been explicitly established that the accused shouted abuse at the constitutionally anchored form of state of the Reich, only that they shouted abuse at the present form of state of the Reich. The possibility of legal error is thereby not excluded. The distinction the Reich Court made between the two kinds of state and the hint that the Weimar Republic was merely some kind of temporary aberration which was not constitutionally anchored demonstrated only too clearly where the judge's real allegiance lay. Such verdicts could not fail to have an effect. Political, and indeed other trials, were major events in the Weimar Republic, attended by large numbers of people in the public galleries, reported at length and in part verbatim in the press, and debated passionately in legislative assemblies, clubs, and societies. Verdicts such as these could only give comfort to the far-right opponents of the Republic and help to undermine its legitimacy. The right-wing and anti-Republican bias of the judiciary was shared by state prosecutors as well. In considering what charges to bring against right-wing offenders, in dealing with pleas and examining witnesses, even in framing their opening and closing speeches, prosecutors routinely treated nationalist beliefs and intentions as mitigating factors. In these various ways, judges and prosecutors, police, prison governors and warders, legal administrators, and law enforcement agents of all kind undermine the legitimacy of the Republic through their bias in favor of its enemies. Remember when they said Eric Adams needs to be, his charges need to be dismissed because it was a political prosecution? Even if they did not deliberately set out to sabotage the new democracy, even if they accepted it for the time being as an unavoidable necessity, The effect of their conduct was to spread the assumption that in some way did not represent the true essence of the German Reich. Few of them seem to have been convinced Democrats or committed to trying to make the Republic work. Where the law and its administrators were against it, what chance did it have? Okay. We're 25% through. 1/4 of the way, guys. Wow. Ugh. Okay. Anything else? All right, well. Free speech bros and bots big mad over Germans exercising its freedom of speech. Oh, I saw that. The swastika carnival thing. Thoughts on pizza made on French bread. Oh, connections. True. Leaf, loaf, roll, bone, scroll, bar, dinosaur, lounge, club, bolt, coin, reel, chill, nugget, rubble, and rest. Oh, fuck me. Like a roll, a scroll, a reel, a rubble? Is that a thing? Like scrolling text stuff, kind of? Reel. Bar? No. Chill. Club? Fuck. Coin, bolt, rubble, rest. Oh no, I see something, but it's not going to be it. Things that like you can dig up, like you can dig up like bones and dinosaurs and nuggets like of gold and rubble. There's no shot this is it. Fuck, and it just went away. Fuck. Chill club? Dinosaur. You wouldn't dig up a whole dinosaur, right? Leaf, a loaf, a roll, a lounge, a coin. No. I don't even think I have the right thing. I just got lucky connecting these. Fuck. A club. Oh, a place where you can like hang out. Like you could hang out at like a bar, a club, a lounge, and a reel? Is that a place you can hang out at? A rest? Like a rest stop? A bolt, a coin, a real, chill, an arrest, a chill? Is there like a chill? Like, let's go chill? Let's go lounge? Let's go club? Let's go bar? Arrest. It's got to be this arrest, right? Not even one off? Just kidding. Whatever. I'm fucking retarded, I guess. What? Oh my God. It's all over. What? What the fuck? Real? Hold on, this always helps. Like you could reel something in? A news reel? A news nugget? A news roll? A news club? A news scroll? Fuck, what did I have before? Nugget, dinosaur, bone, and rubble? Coin? I don't know, bro. Not even one off. Nugget. I don't even know what I'm guessing at right now. Fuck me. I don't care. Get me out of here. Fuck this. Holy shit. Wait, I don't know if I would have gotten any of these. Be at leisure. To chill or loaf? Loaf around? Anybody here likes to loaf? I guess. Okay. Lounge or rest. Okay. Formats of gold. Gold coins, gold bars, gold leaves? I don't even know what that means. Gold leaves? And a gold nugget? Is that a format? I thought that, okay, I guess. Cylinder of material. Bolt? Okay, real roll, I guess? Scroll. Bolt? What is a bolt? Okay. A bolt of cloth. And then seen in the Flintstones. Bone, club, dinosaur, and rubble. Because of like Barney Rubble. Oh my God. Gold leaf is that super thin gold that is sometimes on your food in expensive restaurants. Based. Okay. Be careful, don't die. I love you all very much.